Oh, that gives me some hope, doesn't it? So one day, doesn't that just feel inspiring to watch that? That was 3,000 people, Jew, Jews, Arabs, and I'll say Muslims, Christians, and Jews singing together. I don't know where it took place, actually. A friend of mine introduced it to me, and I probably listened to it 10 times as I've been preparing for today. It just feels so good to watch that. So if we think everybody's wanting to fight, we've got 3,000 people at least representing. Not everybody does. Yes. Well, Rabbi Ted Falcon, I was looking up some things the other day and I saw him talking in Seattle at the CSL over there. And he was talking about how, he said historians say that there has never been a time on this planet that there wasn't at least one war going in history. Now, that's written history, so how far back that goes, I don't know. But then he said, I figured out whose fault it is. It goes back to that first man and that first woman. It's their fault. But then he said, you know, that story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is a myth. And he said, the wonderful thing about myths are that they never happened and they always happen. Isn't that interesting to think about? So, but he says in Genesis 2:21, says that God caused a deep sleep to fall onto Adam, but it never says that he ever woke him back up. So, go figure. Are we all sleepwalking here? What's going on? So then what can we hope for? We see something like this, it's inspiring, but then we deal with everyday stuff. What can we hope for? And this, you know, I took seriously that hope is the first day of Advent. But with unity, well, we'll get into that. And maybe we feel pulled to give in to hopelessness. If there have always been wars and separation, who am I to think that I can make a difference? I can do something different than that. Let's begin on our way to the process of hope. So we begin with where we are right now. Where else can you start, right? Besides where you are right now. We may not be ready to take the big plunge into faith, but it's where we come to in the process of hope that makes the difference. Let's explore the difference as we begin the season of Christmas. Today's December 1st, first day of Advent, and here we are on the countdown to Christmas. And the process of hope. What does it mean to have hope? So today, excuse me, today is the first candle of Advent, the candle of hope and faith. And I found Reverend Kurt Condra, who writes that most Christians focus on hope during the first week of Advent, but in unity, perhaps inspired by the view that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, we contemplate both hope and faith as we spiritually prepare our hearts and minds for Christmas. And isn't that worth it? I mean, it's just, this year I've been really looking forward to Christmas because I'm not so caught up in trying to figure out how I'm going to spend all this time with all my kids who are spread out all over the place. And, you know, I've just got a plan that's going to make it easier, and I can just settle in and really get myself in a place of expecting and hoping to be in Christmas, you know. Think of it as faith. Hope arises, he says, this is Reverend Kurt Condra. He says, think of it as faith. Hope arises when we glimpse a new possibility. And you have the hopefulness that that possibility could come true, you know. They can motivate us to adopt new ways of thinking and behaving. For instance, if I believe in an abundant universe, yet there's times that we kind of get caught up with the finances not looking real good, and I don't know about you, but the anxiety can creep right back in there, even though I believe in an abundant universe, right? Resolving these contradictions is the domain of faith. In the spiritual dimension, we experience faith as a deep inner knowing arising from divine intelligence. So you may not know how it happens, but we can believe it is happening. We start with the process of hope right where we are. We are here together on the first day of December, recognizing the first day of Advent. Hope is the first part of preparing for the Christmas season. Our awareness of hope may be external to us. on the outside. It may not be a very personal experience, but we know that we can look for something better to come. So how can we make use of hope? Well, faith looks to the invisible, and instead of seeing a void, it fastens its gaze upon solid reality. Faith is not hope, it's substance. And this is from Ernest Holmes in the book Science of Mind. It does not look away from itself, being substance. It looks within itself. In doing this, it realizes that the life of God is also the life of humans. Kind of interesting to think about. We're all in it together, right? Faith affirms this and denies anything and everything that contradicts what, for it, is the supreme fact of existence. Well, we have an equation that you probably used too. A thought plus a feeling equals a result. So if you're using hope and faith, and you've got those thoughts and those feelings moving in a good direction, you can count on a good outcome. The equation tells us that's the way it works. But if our thoughts and feelings are kind of going off on another direction, you might not like where that comes through. So it's something to be taken care of and looking at as we go through. At this point in our process, we can look at the process of hope as becoming aware of how we are participating. The more we invest ourselves in moving to a higher level of awareness, the more we benefit from the process. It begins to work for us. We become more engaged and perhaps even more curious about what we have within our grasp to lead us to greater clarity in this process. And you've probably experienced that. When you kind of step into it and you really feel like you're engaged, things start to happen a little differently. It almost feels a little magical sometimes, doesn't it? You just kind of like, whoa, this feels really good. And I haven't even had any caffeine yet today. So how can we make use of hope? Faith looks to the invisible, and instead of seeing a void, it fastens itself upon solid reality. At this point, we look at the process. I think we're coming back around here. So how do we give hope? This is my favorite part. What can you and I do to give hope? Well, in the Roman Catholic tradition, a holy year or jubilee is a significant religious event, and this is a jubilee year. I guess every 7 years. This started back in Leviticus, and I think it was every 49 or 50 years. But what it came together with is it's in the early days when it was a jubilee year, slaves were freed, debts were forgiven, and it served as kind of a reset. You had hope that you could actually get your feet back under you again. You had a new chance instead of just always working hard to keep up with what was never going to get better. Pretty good plan, wasn't it? So a jubilee year is above all the year of Christ who brings life and grace to humanity. So we can give hope by paying attention to the positive. When you're interacting with somebody, instead of noticing because it's really easy to notice them, isn't it? All the little details of something that wasn't quite done right or could have been more positive, or instead, for instance, you can see a child coloring a picture. Well, there's all kinds of imperfections you can find in that picture. But you notice that the child has colored everything on that picture. Wow, look what you did. I see you really colored everything. You did it. You did that really well. You did it. And you can tell it's working because you get feedback, right? Their eyes brighten up. They kind of maybe a little smile on their face. They may even kind of move closer to you. They may even reach up and hug you. So you know you've made a connection. You've made a difference. You've given a feeling of hope to someone. And you know, it's interesting when you get in the habit of that. It gets easier to do. It gets easier to find those positive things. And you start to see how much it changes things. So it's part of our process is how can we give hope to others? And I don't know about you, but when I'm giving hope to others, I feel really full of hope and faith and encouragement myself. So We're all together here. So now you can see the illustration everywhere of how we grow from ideas to manifestation. The ideas come first as a flash. Let me step back here. So where does hope take us is the next piece. So I found this from Charles Fillmore. On January 24th of 1923, this is what he shared on a radio show. Christ is an idea in divine mind, and that idea is everywhere. It's like a math or music or any other of those exact sciences. There is an idea of a perfect Christ in divine mind. That idea hasn't been fully realized. So we say the ideas of any of those sciences have never been fully expressed. People are trying to express these ideas more and more into manifestation. Now you can see the illustrator everywhere of how we grow from ideas to manifestation. The ideas come as a flash first. There's something that we see outside of ourselves. That is the first conception of this Christ. Jesus of Nazareth was the first, we will say, perception. He was historical. He came in the personality. So that's where it starts. And in our process, everything's on maybe the outside. We're observing, paying attention. It doesn't have to stay on the outside though, right? We understand it then as outside of ourselves, separate from us. Recently, I taught a class in this. I've been working on a program, an education program, to become an actual licensed minister. And teaching this class was one of the practicums I needed to do. So I didn't choose the book. It was already something that was in the works at our center. And it was Shortcut to a Miracle. And I don't know if any of you have seen that book. If you have never seen it, it's worth getting. It's a great book. So it was the first class I had taught, but the class served as one of those practicums. I didn't choose the book. So I'm telling you what I've written here. But it's all about manifesting miracles, is what the book is, Shortcut to a Miracle. So early in the book, the authors, Michael C. Rand and Elizabeth Rand Barrett, wrote about physics, about Newtonian physics, the world we see, and quantum physics. And I've had some experiences in kind of delving into that. I had a class that was called Science and Spirituality that really delved into quantum. It takes a few rounds to start to kind of get where you're going with that. So this is what they wrote. Newton's theories are now recognized to apply to the visible world. However, they simply don't work at the subatomic level. Conversely, quantum theory is applicable at the level of both the visible, microscopic, and invisible subatomic worlds. Now, this is sounding kind of scientific, but it's not that much, so just bear with me. Essentially, then, quantum theory does not replace Newtonian physics. It transcends it by extending our scientific knowledge into the subatomic realm, a realm where the laws of physics are completely different. So these words, when I read that, just inspired me. I had to put a thesis together. I wasn't sure what my topic was going to be. And when I read that, I thought, I was using a leadership paper, and I thought, transcendent leadership. I thought, wow, I just came up with something, didn't I? But then when I started doing a search, it's out there. But not a whole lot has been done. And it's not something that's been really written about in a spiritual community. So that was my topic for my thesis that I just finished last Monday night and completed this graduate program. So that's pretty exciting. But this inspired me so much. The idea, we hear about quantum. It's been around since the turn of last century. It's been well over 100 years that we've been talking about quantum and what it is and the things that they've created out of quantum understanding. But yet we still walk around looking at this physical world that's still Newtonian physics, using our senses. So I started writing about this, and the more I worked with it, I knew that Amat Goswami, I don't know if you've heard his name before, he was in What the Bleep Do We Know? And he taught the class I took on science and spirituality. And his theory was that quantum physics is basically explaining that God exists, that because that's where this energy is coming from. And so I used other authors as well. But I'm sure you've heard the stories of where they take two particles that have been together and they separate them and they put them miles apart. And I think one went up into space. And somehow those particles knew exactly what the other one was doing at the same time. And that seems so mysterious. How did that happen? There's no information going to them until you come back to, as Bill Evans reminded me last time I was here, that there's only one energy. Everything's one. Those particles are the same particle expressing in two different places. It makes everything start to come to life in a whole new way, doesn't it? So you realize that hope and faith are not just out there on the outside anymore. We're right in the middle of it all. So transcendent leadership. It's a leadership style that practices emotional intelligence and uses collaboration and teamwork without the abuse of power. There's no top dog telling everybody else what they got to do, and you don't have to toe the line because we're all in it together. What a concept. We can move through this process of hope to raise our level of awareness to be able to find solutions beyond the thinking that created them. And that's what the idea of quantum, it transcends Newtonian physics because our awareness transcends it. We're no longer trying to solve the problem with the same thinking that created it. And I just thought that was pretty exciting to really see how that could land like that. So we find ourselves coming to know ourselves in a whole new way. We can begin to find self-acceptance and new ways to grow and develop. It was one of the things that really came out of writing this thesis, and I had to just plow through it and get it done because the time was limited. The Holmes Institute actually closed their doors, and Monday night was the end of it on the 25th, so everything had to be turned in that day. Yet very sad that because they just reaccredited it, had a beautiful program. The dean asked Greg Salyer, who is the professor that's done all this work with this, she said, design us a program that'll save the world. And so he put this together, and she said, okay, well, that's what we're doing. But they weren't able to keep it going. The organization finally said they couldn't, COVID lowered the enrollment, and they were not charging a whole lot for the classes, and so sadly it closed. But this, with this awareness, you can think of, okay, we're rising higher to step over and look at it from a different place than where we were when those problems got started. New ideas can come through this. I'm a Toastmaster, and there was an older member in Toastmasters, and he was in one of the clubs here. I can't think of the name of it right now. Anyway, one of the Steadfast clubs. Anyway, they were going out to do a cleanup at the beach, and they had youth coming to help. And he shared that he was just feeling so depressed and sad to see the state of what things were for these kids growing up, that what's being left to them and the issues that they have to face. So he kind of stewed on that for a little bit. And when the young people started getting there, he just said, I'm just so sorry. I just feel so bad about this. And they said, hey, we're not worried about it. We've got all kinds of ideas. And then you think there's ideas that nobody's even thought of yet that are still coming through. We are unlimited potential, right? So we do not need to be in a world of despair here. So the process of hope opens the way to higher consciousness in each of us, as well as collectively. And there we are again all together. St. Paul said, we have the mind of Christ, which means that each one of us has immediate access to the intelligence of the universe. And isn't that a thought? I think about that once in a while when I'm not so busy trying to figure out how to get things done. It's like we have access to everything already. That's a pretty exciting thought. We give intelligence outlet in two ways, by pure inspiration or intuition, or the more common way of bitter experience. And with most of us, it's through the latter. If it were not for the divine hope in us, our experience would be more than the human mind could digest. The process of hope opens us to blessings as we accept our access to hope and faith in the baby and the story of Christmas, with its promise of everlasting life and infinite good. So I just want to ask you to take a minute now and just close your eyes and go within. And just take a couple of deep breaths. Get comfortable in your seat. Can you imagine letting yourself open up to the process of hope? You can just start where you are and begin to explore that process and explore the season of Christmas with that hope. Where does it feel like hope resides for you right now? And just sit with that for a minute. You can say to yourself, I have a choice in how I experience hope. Think about how satisfying it is to give hope to others. This Christmas season has been opened with hope and faith. Let it bless you with new awareness and acceptance for the good to come. And so it is. Amen. Thank you.